Good morning, children. I hope all of you are safe and well doing. I'm here to explain the part 3 of the story, The Best Christmas Present in the World, written by Michael Morpeko. Before moving to the lesson or story, let us have a short recap of it. So I hope all of you remember. But anyway, I'll tell you the recap of the story. So here, Mr. Michael Morpeko is the narrator of the story. So he is the storyteller. So one day he goes to Bridport and finds a roll-top desk in a junk shop and brings to his workshop, which the desk was fully damaged. So he tries to repair it, but he finds a letter addressed to Mrs. Coney, that is Jim Macpherson's wife. Jim Macpherson was an army man in British. So here, what happens? He reads out the letter, even though if he knows that we shouldn't read others' letters. His curiosity made him to read it. So he reads the letter, and in the letter was written by Jim Macpherson to his wife Coney, and he had told all about the experiences he had in the warfield. I hope you remember, children, about all the football match and how the Fritz and Tommy, how they greeted each other with the Christmas and shared all their eatables and the marzipan cake and all those things which all they had, they shared, and they played football match, and everyone in the warfield, all the soldiers wanted to have a peaceful life. They want to spend their Christmas with their family, and how they long for peace. They don't want to wage war against each other. Instead, they wanted peace. So here he ends Jim Macpherson ends the letter stating that he will soon complete the war and come back next Christmas, by next Christmas. And he says that both of them, that is Jim Macpherson and Coney, would celebrate the Christmas in a happy manner. And he ends the letter there. And here the part 3 of the story begins. So after Michael Morpeko reads the letter, he folds it back and he slips into the envelope, and he does not sleep for the whole night. He was thinking that he should return back the letter to Mrs. Coney. So here he says, I drove into Bidport, just a few miles away. I asked a boy walking his dog where Copper Beaches was. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burnt out shell, the roof gaping, the windows boarded up. So what happens? This Mr. Michael Morpeko, he decides to return the letter back to Mrs. Coney, that is Jim Macpherson's wife. So he starts traveling to Bidport, and on the way he spots a small boy, and he just inquires about the address. So when he reaches that address, he sees that the house was fully burned down. It was nothing left over there. So he knocks up at the next door. I knocked at the home next door. Would anyone know the whereabouts of Mrs. Macpherson? He asked to that girl who was living in the next house. So the girl replies, Oh yes, I know her well, a lovely old lady, a bit muddle-headed, but at her age she was entitled to be, wasn't she? So this girl, she explains that Mrs. Coney was a very lovely old lady, and she also says that she was a muddle-headed lady. Muddle-headed means somewhat confused lady. She was always making herself in a confused state. But she says that also says that in her age of 101, she might be. It is a nature of being so muddle-headed, because she was all around 101 when the house got burnt up. So she says 101 years old. She'd been in the house when it caught fire. So when the house caught fire, Mrs. Macpherson was 101 years old. No one really knew how the fire started. but it would well have been candles. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive. The fireman had got her out just in time. She is in nursing home now, Burlington House, on the Dorchester Road, on the other side of the town. So the girl says that the fireman had saved her. The house was burned. She says she's always a muddle-headed, confused lady. She says that electricity is very expensive and we have to save electricity. And she used candles. She lit up candles all over the house, and that might be the reason for the fire. So the fireman saved her at the perfect time. And she also says that Mrs. Macpherson is in Burlington House, that is a nursing home, Burlington House on the Dorchester Road. So she says that Mrs. Macpherson would be found in Burlington House. So there, Michael Mopico starts to go to Burlington House. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. There were paper chains up in the hallway with a little Christmas tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angel on it. I said I was a friend come to visit Mrs. Macpherson to bring her a Christmas present. I would see through it in the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. The matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me a mince pie. She walked me along the corridor. Mrs. Macpherson is not with in the others, she told me. She'd rather confused today, so we thought it best if she had a good rest. She has no family, you know. No one visits her, so I am sure she'll be only too pleased to see you. She took me into a conservatory with wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. So what happened? This Macpherson, sorry, Michael Morpeko, he finds that Burlington house and he goes into the house and inquires about Mrs. Macpherson. So the matron, she leads them. They were all celebrating Christmas. They were happily singing, and they were around the Christmas tree enjoying the Christmas evening. So the matron, she takes him to where Mrs. Macpherson was present. So she says that she had no family and she is always in a confused state. No one comes to visit her. And she also says that she will be placed today to see Michael Morpeko to come and visit her. So she takes her to the to where Mrs. Macpherson was there, and she leaves him there and goes off. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had silver white hair pinned into a whipsy bun. She was gazing at the garden. She turned and looked up at me vacantly. So, what's happening here? This old lady was very confused. She was not in a mood of celebrating the Christmas or anything like that. So, she was confused and she was just peeping outside the window as if she was waiting for someone to come. So as I was speaking, rise. So here, what happens? Michael Mopico here, he brings the letter and he hands over to the lady, Mrs. Coney. Hello, happy Christmas, Coney. I found this. I think it's yours. So what happened? Saying these words, he takes that tin box and the covered and the letter which is covered in a sellotape in the tin box. He gives the tin box to Mrs. Coney, and she was very happy. Uh, something glowed in her face. She was very happy. As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. So here, Mrs. Coney was so happy to receive that letter back. She'd love to see that letter which she has preserved so many years of the memory of her husband. So here, she was very happy to see that tin box again. I explained about the desk, about how I found it, but I don't know she was listening. For a while she said nothing, but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips. Suddenly she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. So what happened here? Michael Mopico explains to Coney that he had purchased a roll-top desk which was burnt complete, half burnt. So he says that he had found the letter and he wanted to return the letter back to Mrs. Coney. So he had traveled so long and he has reached this and found her and is now handing over the letter to her. So, as he was speaking, the narrator noted that she was not listening at all. She was just peeping at the letter. She was just staring at the letter. She was her eyes, her attention, everything was fixed up in the letter. Suddenly, she reached out and she took Michael Mopico's, the narrator's hand in her hands, and her eyes were filled with tears. You told me you'd come home my Christmas, dearest, and here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear, sit down. What's happening here? Mrs. Coney never thought that this person was Michael Morpico. She thought that her husband has come back and he is the one who is bringing the letter. And she says she was already muddle-headed and she was always confused. She thought that it was Jim Macpherson, his husband, has returned. So as he told in the letter that he will come back in the next Christmas to see her and both of them will celebrate the Christmas together. So she thinks that her husband has come back and she asks him to sit down near her and she also requests him to read the letter. I read your letter so often, Jim, every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you with me. Now you are. No, you are back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? So what happened here? She says that I always used to read your letter whenever I remember of you. I used to read the letter, but now you are come back, so you can read the letter to me in your own voice. I love to hear your voice. So she pretends that she thinks that Michael Mopico to be as Jim Macpherson and she asks him to read the letter to him and she requests and she pleads him to read the letter. I just want to hear your voice again. I'd love that so much. And then perhaps we'll have some more tea. So what happens? She says, I'd love to hear the letter in your voice. So please read it out to me. And after that, after you read it out, we'll have some more tea and we will. And she also says that she has made a beautiful Christmas cake with marzipan all around. And she says that you like marzipan so much, you love marzipan so much. So now I have made a Christmas cake for you with lots of marzipan all around. I hope all of you remember what is marzipan, children. Marzipan is a ice coating that is after making the cake, which we use to decorate the cake. That is icing on it. So this sugar coating is known as marzipan. So she says you love marzipan so much. So I have made a extra coating of marzipan all around the cake. So we will have that cake. I know how much you love marzipan. So I have made a cake with marzipan all around the cake. So she says, I made you a nice Christmas cake, marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan. So this lady, she was longing to see her husband who was there in the Warfield. So when a person comes to meet her, she thinks that her husband has come back and she feels real happiness and she says that that was the best Christmas present she had ever had in the world. So this is where the story ends. So I hope children you understood the story and before closing the section just I'll give you a moral of the story. The story, The Best Christmas Present in the World, has beautifully depicted a moral. It conveys that war and fight only bring sadness and humiliation all around the world. Everyone should follow the path of peace for attaining the happiness in the world. This would be the best Christmas present in the world for everyone. So here the author says that says he has written this story to just convey a message that all the people long for peace only, and those who are in the war field, both the war field people, they long for peace. They long to live with their families. They want to enjoy the feast of Christmas with their families. So here he says that why we should have war, why we should wage war with each other. Instead, we can love each other and make peace with each other, which brings lot of happiness. So this he says that the happiness is only the best Christmas present in the world. It might be the best Christmas present in the world for everyone. So here the story ends, children. I hope you have understood the story and the moral of the story. Till we meet in the next video session, children, bye from me. Thank you, children.